Now, there's been so many rumors and interesting or strange happenings at or coming out of Lucasfilm lately that it's almost been hard to keep up with it all. Everything from a supposed civil war inside the company behind the scenes, to associates or employees once again taking to social media to do anything from mock fans to tell them not to buy the content. And since I've had so many people asking me what I think about this particular thing or that, I figured I'd just make a general video to sort of cover it all, if possible. And so the first thing I have to say here is that we must keep in mind that everyone who works for or at Lucasfilm is a human being. And I don't say that as some sort of a defense for them or their actions. I just mean that no matter where you go, what place of business you may work at, people tend to be the same everywhere. At least in my experience and from every work story I've ever heard from friends, family, or whoever. No matter what kind of job they have or place they work at, from blue collar to white, there's always, or almost always, going to be ambition, ego, pettiness, those who want to stick their nose in everyone else's business, those who want to skirt by doing the minimum, bosses who want to micromanage everything and everyone and demand your undying loyalty to the company, or a boss who is so hands-off and does nothing that you wonder just what do they get paid for because you're doing all their work. And all of this inevitably leads to drama, and sometimes there are those in a workplace who create drama just for the sake of it, or to try to get someone fired, or in trouble, or whatever else it might be. Anyway, my point here is I think we can pretty safely assume it's like that to some extent, and maybe to a large extent, at a company like Lucasfilm, especially when you consider the drive, ambition, motivation, and everything else it takes to make it in Hollywood, and into a company like Lucasfilm. In theory, only the best of the best make it there, and not all of them got there by playing nice, I'm sure. So does that then mean I think there's a civil war going on behind the scenes? That it's Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and the Mandalorian crew versus Kathleen Kennedy, the story group, and those working on the High Republic era, or who backed the sequel trilogy over wanting to erase it? Well, no, not necessarily. It just means I certainly think it's possible, maybe even likely, that there are different sort of factions within the company with different ideas or agendas for Star Wars, what it should be and where it should go. In fact, it'd surprise and frighten and worry me if everyone there was on the exact same page about everything, because that'd probably mean that everyone's being forced to be on that exact same page, that creativity is being stifled and only one or a few are making all the decisions. And believe it or not, when people can be calm, rational human beings, disagreements and opposing views or visions can actually foster creativity and progress. Yes, I know we've gotten to a place in society where we not only think there's no value in opposing opinions or viewpoints, but regard anyone who doesn't see things exactly as we do as some sort of enemy, but a wise person realizes they might be wrong sometimes and that they might not know everything, and thus they are willing to listen to others and are willing to work with others for the betterment of all. But anyways, not to go too far down that path, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are sort of different sides or mindsets within Lucasfilm. It's pretty natural anywhere you go, so why would it be any different there? The question would then be what level of cooperation or animosity there actually is between these sides. Because if the most extreme rumors are indeed true, and Favreau and Filoni are working towards eliminating or overwriting the sequel trilogy, well then of course those who are responsible for it or enjoy it aren't going to be all too pleased, which would no doubt include Kathleen Kennedy. Because, as I've said before, for better or worse, Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, will always be attached to and sort of the figurehead of the sequel trilogy. That is going to be her lasting legacy with the company, for good or ill, depending on how you feel about those films. So if there are those in the company actively working to undo all that, it's like telling her thanks, but no thanks for all you've done, which she'd probably be just a little bit upset about, as would anyone who likes her or is loyal to her. But as I've also said before, I don't think Kennedy will have her contract renewed by Disney no matter how they, meaning the bigwigs at Disney, feel about her or the sequels or her managing of Star Wars overall, and her contract is up this coming September. And that's because they know how divisive the sequels were in the fandom. They know they stand to gain back far more fans or make more money by bringing in someone else and letting her go than they risk losing by letting her go. It's really a numbers choice. Not that it'll be played exactly like that. They won't just cast her aside and say it's a numbers game. No way they risk the wrath of the mainstream media for firing a woman in such a prominent position. Instead, I'm sure Kennedy will be encouraged to step down and make an announcement in the not too distant future, where she says she's moving on to new challenges and that she feels like she's ushered Star Wars into a new era, but it's time for someone else to take the reins and keep moving things forward, that she did all she could to honor Lucas's legacy and all that sort of thing. But then again here, if she really is worried about her lasting legacy with Lucasfilm and it being erased, she might fight tooth and nail to stay. Maybe she won't play ball with Disney and say all these nice little things that they want her to say, but will instead make Disney be the ones who simply won't renew her contract after all she's done for them, and the media, most likely, would back her and make Disney out to be the bad guys in that scenario. And there have even been some recent small efforts sort of done to solidify the sequel trilogy's place in Star Wars by renaming or rebranding all the different time periods in the new High Republic content, which is thought to be the brainchild of Kathleen Kennedy, with a new timeline where they call the sequel trilogy era the Rise of the First Order. And speaking of the High Republic content, and to kind of move on a little bit, there's a rumor that those responsible for its creation are upset about The Mandalorian bringing back Luke Skywalker and stealing all their thunder weeks before their big launch. And if that is true, it's both petty and makes no sense whatsoever. Because, to be honest with you, I haven't or hadn't been overly excited for the High Republic era content. Not saying I didn't care at all or were dreading it or anything like that, but it's just something I hoped was going to be good, but haven't been on the edge of my seat with anticipation waiting for. And though my excitement for Star Wars is usually pretty high in general, no matter what's going on with the franchise, after the Mandalorian season finale and seeing Luke Skywalker that way, my excitement was off the charts, and I was actually kind of looking forward to the High Republic just to get some new content to kind of sink my teeth into. So the idea that Luke took the wind out of the sails of the High Republic, at least to me, makes no sense at all. And if anything, it did the opposite. It created a windfall for it to coast upon, actually. I mean, Season 2 of The Mandalorian was a big win for Star Wars on the whole, and as far as I can tell, got a lot of fans or people just really excited again. And so if those behind the High Republic are team players and care about Star Wars on the whole and not just their project, they should have been thrilled at the response to Season 2 of The Mandalorian and the return of Luke Skywalker. Not to mention, I think it'll actually do better now, speaking of the High Republic content, than it would have done had it held its original release date and came out in the summer. If they are somehow upset or jealous, maybe that the release of the High Republic era didn't generate the same type of hype and buzz as Luke Skywalker showing up in The Mandalorian and kicking some butt, then all I can say to you is, duh, of course it wouldn't. Even without that, it wasn't going to be anywhere near as big as Season 2 of The Mandalorian. But then again, this might all just be rumors with no substance behind them, and maybe rumors genuinely coming out of Lucasfilm by those looking to stir up drama. As I said before, every workplace has those people who live for the drama. Anyway, to wrap up my thoughts on this, on the idea that a faction in Lucasfilm wants to erase or overwrite the sequels, again, it wouldn't surprise me. When you look at a sampling of normal, everyday Star Wars fans, you'll find some who love the sequels, some who hate them, and some who no doubt fall in between the two extremes. And we've seen the arguments between us fans who just consume the content, well, that they can get pretty heated. So now imagine how heated it could get between those actually creating the content, creating Star Wars itself. And of course, there are some at Lucasfilm who probably hated those films and would love to see a different story take their place. The only questions then are who those people are, what kind of power they actually have, and whether or not they're actively trying to do this and could ultimately seize power, if you will, and if Disney will go along with their plans, which they might if they can be convinced it's for the best and most profitable direction for the franchise to move towards. Okay, and now to briefly touch on some of the things we've seen associates or straight up employees of Lucasfilm saying on social media and sometimes directly at fans or about fans. And well, I think there's a few different ways to look at it if we're going to be fair. There's that side of me that honestly doesn't see it as a huge issue, that they should be allowed to say whatever the hell they want, they're free individuals, and that they shouldn't always be beholden to towing the company line, and that I even prefer it because I get to see what they're actually or really all about. But then there's that part of me that thinks they should be professional, even on their own time, if you will, and I wonder how they even get away with it, because I've had jobs in the past where I had to sign a contract basically saying that as long as I was employed with the company, I couldn't or wouldn't say anything disparaging on social media or anywhere else that might harm their business. And if some of the small companies I've worked for made me do that, I'm sure Lucasfilm has similar, albeit much more extensive and thorough, contracts for anyone it employs. But the one I really don't get is when someone all but tells people or a certain group of fans not to buy the content that they and the company they worked for are creating, or that it's maybe not for them. I really don't know how Lucasfilm or any company stands for that, nor do I know how you could write a Star Wars book that isn't for or intended for all of its fans. I get that if it's a younger reader book, maybe adult fans won't get into it as much. But coming from someone who does read literally everything, even the young reader stuff, some of it can certainly be decent and enjoyable enough for what it is, even if it's clearly written for someone much younger than me. So that leaves me wondering if they either have no tact as a writer, or if their message is just that important to them, more important to the story. And if that is the case, if you see Star Wars as just a platform for your message, I guess you're right. I guess that's not for me, and I should save my money. Though I'm not sure how Disney would feel about that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about all this. Do you believe there's a civil war at Lucasfilm? And how do you feel about associates of Lucasfilm speaking out and going after fans? Is it unprofessional? Or is it their right to say what they want, quote unquote, off the clock? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.